Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Monday, July 7th. It's Alissa Coram here. And a down day to start the week on Trump tariff headlines. But we've been in a strong bull market. Here with me now to discuss more and some notable stocks from today's session is my colleague, Ed Carson. Ed, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ali. I want to take a look at Uber, Fortinet, and Toast, three stocks that did pretty well today.
All right, we'll take a look at those standout names. But first, let's take a closer look at the major indexes and provide added context to the action we saw today. The Nasdaq down 0.9% in today's session. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 down about 0.8%. The Dow down 0.9% here, and headed into the close. Small caps looking pretty weak on the day, with the Russell 2000 down some 1.6% after recent outperformance and getting above that 200-day line. So here's a look at the NASDAQ and stepping back, putting things into context, Ed. Not only has it been a great move, to say the least, off the lows, but the last 2 weeks provided some pretty powerful gains here. So even though it was a headline driven decline today, that aside, it seems like we're still in a healthy position overall. And short term, we were getting kind of stretched headed into this week.
Getting kind of stretched. Look, we've had a really good couple of weeks and a great 3 months, as you said. There were some stocks that are near buy points. There always seem to be some stocks that are going to be near buy points, but a lot of stocks moved out the last couple of weeks. So yeah, we're a little stretched. The context here: less than a 1% decline after big moves. We're at record highs for the S&P and Nasdaq. The Dow was almost there, so it's essentially at record highs. Even the Russell's still above the 200-day line. So, I mean, yeah, you would like to be up every day, but we're not going to be. Yeah, today President Trump, as he had said, as we knew
Right.
was coming, you know, sent out what he's going to impose tariffs of 25% against Japan and South Korea, some pretty high tariffs among some smaller countries as well. More will be coming over the next couple of days, but those won't kick in until August 1st. So maybe the market is saying, well, we don't really think they're going to be that bad, or maybe they'll be pushed back some more. I don't know. But so far, the market's taking it in stride. And I think that's, you just have to, just sort of put that in perspective. Yeah, if the market really sells off,
Mhm.
plunges through the 21-day line, et cetera, et cetera. But those are things that are not happening. So I think that investors probably didn't necessarily need to be doing a whole lot today. There weren't a whole lot of buying opportunities, but people should be pretty heavily invested and probably not doing a whole lot today.
Right. I totally agree because even though you're seeing some potentially actionable setups out there with the market being stretched and pulling in, it seems like the timing could be off a little bit. If most stocks move with the major indexes, buying a breakout that could have increased odds of failing or at least testing you. It seems like the door is open for that potential.
Yeah, it just feels like there's more downside risk to the market, not necessarily because the news is going to be bad, but yeah, it's just because we're a little stretched. A pullback just to the 10-day line, would be something. You could see 3, 4% declines in growth stocks if the market did that. So it's just little things like that. Again, things that wouldn't really matter that much in the long run, but could upset things if you bought new stocks right now.
Exactly. Okay, so the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq still holding near highs above prior highs as well. The Dow, anything to note here with the Dow's action?
Nothing really with the Dow. Just one more point. There's really not, aside from the tariffs, there's not a whole lot of news this week. But
Mm.
next week, we'll get starting getting earnings season
Earnings.
really kicking in, and there'll be some other economic data. But earnings season, it's been sort of eased off for the last few weeks, but definitely going to start picking up. So that's just something for investors to be considering, not in the near future, at least.
Yes. Okay, well, let's take a look at the 10-year Treasury yield. Notable move here today, I would say, Ed, breaking a trend line. So moving back up a little bit, just shy of that 4.4% mark.
Yeah, so it's picking up a little bit. Obviously, there's been a pretty sharp decline. So, it is notable. I mean, it's got above those levels. Got it. I just don't know how meaningful. If we just trade
Mhm.
around here, that'd be fine. I think it would have to go a lot higher, get closer to those highs around 4.6, et cetera, before people would get really worried. We
Yeah.
have seen Fed rate cut odds fade a little bit. The tariff. If we do see higher tariffs and we do see tariff uncertainty, that just makes it harder for the Fed to want to take action.
Mhm.
Either so that's just something out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, just something to watch.
Yeah. I feel like Powell's made that pretty clear.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah. All right. Well, let's take a look at some stocks, starting with Uber. Full disclosure, I do own this one as of that gap up about a week and a half or so ago, but a full fledged breakout here today, Ed, up 3.3%. Volume picked up here as well. And it seems like perhaps Tesla's pain is Uber's gain.
It might be, and again, it may not be. It may not really matter for the fundamentals. It certainly doesn't in the short run. I mean, it doesn't matter at all in the short run. But yes, if you thought something, with robo taxis, that could hurt. That could hurt Uber. There's also other things out there, but today it's rallying off of that nice move, as you say, higher volume. It was nice to see this pause because when it first sort of tried to break out about a week or so ago, well, it was looking a little stretched from the 50-day line. So it's a little less so. I'm not sure where it is now versus the 50-day line, probably a little bit, but still nice to see that pause. It is up there at 11%. I think where you bought it made a lot of sense because it was not only breaking the downtrend, but it was getting above the old buy point. There was wasn't a whole lot of resistance there. So
Mhm.
uh, the relative strength line is basically at highs on the weekly here. You can sort of see that are getting, or at least at close to 52-week highs. So been showing pretty good action here. I think that the earnings are declining. That I think they have some investment stuff in there, so it gets a little bit sort of weird. Some of the numbers can get inflated, not necessarily related to the operational stuff, but still showing solid revenue growth. Yeah, along the way.
Yeah, I really like that relative strength on the weekly chart, and the recent earnings growth has been quite strong. As you said, we'll have to see how ultimately the annual numbers play out here, but as of right now, a strong stock and some strong fundamentals behind it, and the story there. For folks who weren't watching IBD Live this morning, we were reminding, well, what was behind that gap up a couple of weeks ago on 624? Well, they happened to announce that day they were continuing their partnership with Waymo with a rollout of robo taxi services to Atlanta. So it had that tidbit of news that day, roughly, coinciding with the Tesla robo taxi launch in Austin. So it was almost like Uber was saying, "Hey, cool that you're doing that in Austin, but look at what we're doing. We're continuing to expand our robo taxi partnership with Waymo." So seeing some recent momentum there, and we'll have to see if this breakout can work. While the market, as we mentioned, is getting a little bit short term extended, but this definitely bucked that market weakness today.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. Let's go to Fortinet in the security software group, Ed.
There were a few names that were sort of moving out. Rubrik actually, looked
Yeah.
like it was going to be the stronger performer today. And again, maybe this is the beginning of something, but it's like right at the day's highs, it felt like it was moving out, like breaking a downtrend, but it just pulled back a little bit, actually bounced back again. So that's looking fine. That might be more the leader, but maybe but Fortinet felt a little bit more like a closed actionable above these early entries. So again, if you say, well, Fortinet's not growing fast enough, I want Rubrik, kind of thing, that's fine. Just wait maybe for to get above today's high. But Fortinet, it made a comeback. If you look on a weekly chart, this one sort of struggled for a while. It had sort of ugly areas. Then it made a move. It has these sort of lumpy areas, but it's come back. Relative
Mhm.
strength line could be a little stronger, but that's after a pretty decent run here. So cybersecurity does go in little leader, sort of hands off the baton. Cybersecurity seems to do well
Mhm.
consistently, but there's definitely, oh, this time it's these two or three stocks. Now it's these two or three stocks. So maybe this one is it's sort of in the middle of the pack, but was showing some actionable traits here today.
Mhm. I feel like a pretty solid earnings line here. So, with good earnings track record, strong double digit growth for a number of quarters, perhaps decelerating a bit lately from, that 54% a couple quarters ago to 35% in the most recent quarter, which is still quite strong. And revenue growth has reaccelerated generally from that single digit growth that it saw in the March 24 quarter. And moving on, let's round things out with a look at Toast Ed. Speaking of triple digit growth, turning from negative to positive, but we'll take it. So, taking a look at the daily chart here, a day of strength for Toast, no doubt, up 2.9%.
Yeah, and there's some strong volume here. It was, it's pretty tight action here, and it was nice to see this one, the prior breakout sort of hold, because Toast does have a history of sort of like breaking out and then failing and then setting
Mhm.
up again. Uh, I think you could have taken action on this one today because it's, maybe doing a partial position because it would be nice to get above the highs from a couple weeks ago, which is essentially at the same levels. This whole above 45 is where the buy point is, and there's little early entries you could do. But maybe you could do an early entry, to start a position as it bounced off the 50-day line or the 10-week line, the 50-day line there, and I think the 10-week line from last week. So it's still in range of that. So there were some areas there. Look, yeah, strong growth. Obviously, it's getting off versus losses, but that's when you start seeing the valuations suddenly quickly come down because the profits come roaring, lapping up on losses. Strong tight action here. I mean, there were some looser bases, and so it's like, well, that prior breakout was like it was nice to see, but it was like it wasn't the most perfect situation in some ways,
Mhm.
but now it's sort of traded more tightly. So if you didn't get it on that prior one, that's often the chance you can get the a messy, deeper consolidation, and then something more appropriate, more dignified, as Chris might say. Chris Gussel, our boss, might say. So actionable here. You could still wait for the breakout, maybe to fill out a position or to start a position.
Yeah. I like your thoughts there, Ed. The depth of this base, about 12%. So, definitely an orderly structure here, but not without its twists and turns. It did have a down day of 7% in the base where it closed at the lows, but the very next day, as you mentioned, got that nice support right where you'd like to see it at the 50-day. So if you are a pullback or a reversal buyer, just like you said, maybe you initiate a position there. But I've got to be honest, that would have been a little tough for me after a 7% down day and heavy volume. So maybe it's settled down a little bit more and showing that renewed strength.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There does seem like while growth and is doing very well, there have been individual days. There's even when the market's sort of like not doing that much, and maybe it's a bad day, but nothing terrible. Individual names, sort of out of the blue, just have these bad days, and it is something to watch. It just seems to be the character of the market that some of these growth names just like boom, it's down 5, 8%. It's like, oh, what just happened there? So it's just something to keep in mind with concentration, with making sure you enter at a good spot. I know that like you, I try to look for early entries, trying to minimize those kind of
Mhm.
impacts. It doesn't protect you entirely, but just looking for ways to try to get those entries to minimize the risks a little bit.
I totally agree. Just because we are arguably in a raging bull market, a very strong uptrend, no doubt, doesn't mean that you want to get too wild with your entry points. You still have to stay disciplined because, as you mentioned, some days for growth stocks could really test traders if you're not getting in at the proper entry point. And even still, shakeouts do happen. So something to keep in mind there. All right, Ed. We appreciate it. Thanks so much for your thoughts today.
Thank you, Ellie.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. Just want to give you a heads up that today at 5 p.m. Eastern, we have the next installment of our monthly market report with hedge fund manager Jim Ropel and myself. Looking forward to seeing you there live at 5 p.m. Eastern. Can't wait to pick Jim's brain about what we're seeing in the current market. We know he's bullish long term, but what about right here? What's he seeing out there? What are his top stocks to watch? And what he's thinking about at the current market juncture here. So make sure you tune in live at 5 p.m. Eastern today on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, as always, we'll post that video to investors.com/videos as well if you're not able to make it live. That's it from us, everyone. We will see you also in the morning on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details of our daily morning live stream starting 10 minutes before the opening bell. See you there tomorrow, and we'll see you right back here after the close.